To get started on this exercise, you should have downloaded the tracking text folder that has a footage folder inside of it. Later on, we're going to add this to the background of our composition. Once you've launched After Effects, the first thing we need to do is to create a new composition from scratch. We're going to call this new composition our tracking text. The size of it is going to be a preset size of HDV 720 with a frame rate of 29.97 frames per second. The duration of it is going to be 5 seconds, and we can keep the background black for now. We'll say OK. The first thing we need to do is to add a new text layer. We can do this by going up to Layer, down to New, and creating a new text layer right in the center of our document. We'll type the words radar in the very center of the screen. The book wants us to use a font from the Adobe Type Kit. To do this, go down to File, down to Add Fonts from Adobe. This will launch the Adobe Fonts website. Remember, from here, you can search everything in a grid format. You can type in your text. I'm going to type in radar. And you can also sort by featured or name. Now, since we're looking for a specific font, we can go up to the very top up here and search for Paralucent. And select it. Here's the font family Paralucent, and we can add the family. This is going to tell you to manage this using your Creative Cloud app, and so we can go and open the app. Once this is open, you can install the entire font family. This will take just a moment to download all the versions of the font. Once it's done, we can jump back into After Effects, make sure your type is selected, and we can type in Paralucent, and we want the stencil medium version of it. If you haven't done so already, also make sure the size of your font is 150 pixels and that it's aligned in the paragraph by center text. Now, to animate the tracking of this, we also want to make sure our tracking is currently set to 0. We can go down to our radar timeline layer and twirl open the options and then twirl open the text options. From here, we can click the arrow next to the word animate, and we're going to animate the tracking portion of this. So select tracking, and notice that this adds an animator at the very bottom of your text sublayer. Make sure your playhead is set to the very beginning of your timeline at 0, 0, and the tracking amount is going to be set to 0, and we'll click the stopwatch to add a keyframe set to there. We're going to move our current time indicator, our little playhead, to 2 seconds, which is right here. And then we're going to set our tracking amount to be -100 and hit return. This is going to bring our text completely inward. Then we can move our playhead to the very end of the composition, right at 5 seconds. And let's go back down to our tracking amount and set it to be -260. And this is going to spread it way out again. Now, since the word radar reads the same both forward and backwards, it's going to make it look like the words are swapped around or gone in and out, which is okay. If we were to test this, we can go up to our little preview panel, hit play. You can see how it moves inward and then back out throughout the entire 5 seconds. Now let's play some stuff in the background. To open up the footage file, we'll go to our Projects panel and double-click. Let's locate the folder it's in, which is the Tracking Text Footage folder, and find the Map Background JPEG. We'll hit Open. This will add it to our Project panel. We can now go down to our timeline and twirl everything closed and drag that map below our radar image. Before I move on, the book doesn't point this out, but I do want to select my text, and let's make sure it's centered inside of my entire composition. So with that layer selected, I'm going to go to my Align panel, make sure it's aligning the layers to the composition, and then align it horizontally and vertically. So now it's centered directly from here. To enhance the cinematic quality of this, let's select our Map JPEG layer. We can press the S key to open the scale properties and hold Shift and hit the R key to also add on the rotation properties. Make sure your playhead is set to 0 seconds, and let's turn on the stopwatch for each one of those. From here, let's move our playhead to the very end of our composition, and we can set the scale value to scale it up just a little bit, so at 110% for both the X and Y, and let's have it rotate 3 times. So we'll type in 3 for the value of this. Uh-oh, that looked absolutely wrong to have it rotate around so much. Let's go back. I'm going to set my playhead at the very end. Here's where my mistake was. Rather than typing the 3 here, we're going to set that to 0. The number of degrees is going to be set to 3. So 3 degrees, just slightly as it rotates. Now when I press play, you can see how it slowly rotates and gets slightly larger towards the end of it. Finally, let's add a radio wave effect to this. We'll go up to Layer and create a new solid layer. The size of this layer, or the setup of it, we're going to call this our radio waves. Make sure to click Make Comp Size so that it's the same size as your overall composition. We're going to set the color of it by clicking on the swatch to be black and say OK. Then when we say OK, this will give us a black swatch on top of everything. We're going to reposition this to make sure that it's underneath the word radar. With the radio waves layer selected, let's go to our effects and presets. We'll do a search for radio waves. There it is here. And let's click and drag this onto the radio waves layer. Inside our parameters, let's set the lifespan of it, which is right here, to be 5. We'll set the fade in value, which is down here, to be 3, and the strokes fade out value to be 3 as well. We'll do a starting stroke width of 1 and an ending stroke width of 3. We can then use the eyedropper to select the green tool. So clicking on the eyedropper next to the color, let's choose the color green from inside this to change the color from here. Now when we press play, this will add a simple little radar effect. It's very subtle. You may have to scroll in to be able to see it, but there they are radiating from the center. Tell you what, if I want to make these even more visible, rather than clicking on the darker green, I'm going to carefully select this lighter green. Now when I press play, there we go. We can see our radial effect really show up. With this done, we can change the other effects from it being a square profile to a sawtooth in profile, as well as increasing our end stroke value to an end width of 100. Oh, excuse me, not a start end width, but an end width of 100. Now when I press play, they get much bigger and they fade out. Now it looks like true radar. The last thing we need to do is to save our composition. So if you haven't done so already, we'll go to File and Save the entire project. Call this our radar. Make sure your name is on it, and you know where it's going to be saved to. And then finally, we can go to File and export it to our render queue. Make sure your render settings are set to best high quality, and you know where it's going to output to by clicking on the name of it. And I'm going to save mine to the desktop. Once it's saved, you can hit render, and this will render your final movie. Upload this final movie and the After Effects file to the class page.